Covert narcissists are masters of disguise, blending seamlessly into our lives while leaving a trail of emotional destruction. Their subtle manipulation tactics can be nearly impossible to detect. That is, until it's too late. So in this video, we're going to uncover 7 conversational clues that reveal a covert narcissist's true nature. These red flags are easy to miss if you don't know to look out for them. So let's dive in with number 1, mixed messages. Mixed messages are going to be very difficult to detect with a covert narcissist early on, especially if there's love bombing, which there usually is. So they might be very flattering with their words, and they might stay in a conversation with you for a long time, signaling that they're interested in you. But if you're paying close attention, you might notice that it's all smoke and mirrors. You know when you're genuinely interested in someone, you ask questions and you actually care about the answers. So a covert narcissist might also ask tons of questions and even make future plans with you, but their eyes glaze over when you're talking. It's like they're there, but they're not really there. Here are some examples so you can get a feel for what this might look like. They nod along to your stories, but can't remember the details later. They text frequently, but always steer the conversation back to themselves. They mirror your interests, but something about it feels hollow. And to get even more confusing, a covert narcissist may show intense interest in some things, like your vulnerabilities, for example. So if someone gets too personal too soon and you're seeing evidence of other red flags in this same person, it's probably best to bow out while you can. Because if you don't, once you get to know them a little bit better, those mixed messages start to intensify. This is when you'll see things like ghosting and breadcrumbing. And here's a helpful comment from one of you in the comment section on breadcrumbing. I've been through the breadcrumbing thing. I call it pulling a carrot in front of a horse. It's on a string, and no matter how hard you work to get it, you never can. So if you miss these early mixed messages from a covert narcissist, you're going to find yourself headed down a cycle of intermittent reinforcement, which is a fancy way of saying they're emotionally abusive sometimes and loving other times. And this is exactly what leads to a trauma bond. So if you're feeling confused by someone's hot and cold behavior, especially early on, pay attention. It could be a sign you're dealing with a covert narcissist. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Christina and I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery coach. If you're watching this and it's hitting close to home, I want you to know that things do get better. And for those of you in the thick of it right now, I've just launched a brand new program specifically designed to help break trauma bonds and get your life back after narcissistic abuse. So if you're ready to move forward, check out the link in the description. Now let's move on to the next subtle clue you might be dealing with a covert narcissist. The backhanded compliments. So have you ever had someone say something that kind of sounded like a compliment but left you feeling, I don't know, kind of off? That's the trademark move of a covert narcissist. They're pros at slipping in little digs disguised as praise. And here are a couple of examples. Wow, you're so brave to wear that outfit with your body type. Or maybe you're pretty smart for someone from your background. Ouch, right? So at first you might think maybe they're just a little bit socially awkward and they don't know any better. But here's the thing. There's usually more to it than that. You see, most of the time, covert narcissists are secretly stewing in their own jealousy and resentment. They can't stand seeing others shine, so they've got to knock you down a peg or two. But they do it in this sneaky way that makes you question if you're just being too sensitive. It's like they're testing the waters, seeing how much of their BS you'll put up with. And if you let these so-called compliments slide, a narcissist is going to amp up the nastiness over time. So the next time someone gives you a compliment that leaves you feeling kind of crummy, take note. It might not be you being overly sensitive. It could be a red flag waving right in front of you. Compliments should make you feel good, not leave you feeling like you've been slapped with a velvet glove. And here's a great example of backhanded compliments from the comment section. My ex-husband posted on social media how he was so relieved that our daughter got her looks from me and her brains from him. All right, so moving along now, let's talk about the covert narcissist's favorite role, the victim. You'll see it stronger in some than others, but these folks have a knack for turning normal things into a personal slight against them. It's like they're starring in their own drama where the world is constantly out to get them. You might hear the victim mentality in a bold way, like, nothing ever goes my way. Everyone's always taking advantage of me. Or, I try so hard but no one appreciates it. Or it may come through in a more covert way. So they won't outright say these things, but you watch as they feel slighted by your every word or action. They can take one simple sentence and spin it into a narrative that someone is out to get them. But of course, they won't do this with you at first. In the beginning, look for signs that they're playing the victim in other areas of their life. Because here's the thing, this victim act serves one of two purposes. It's either a way to manipulate you into providing constant support and validation, or it conveniently deflects any responsibility for their actions or failures onto someone else. Pay attention to how often they cast themselves as the wronged party. Do they always have a story about how they've been mistreated? Are they quick to blame others for their problems? If so, you might be dealing with a covert narcissist. So if you're always playing the role of rescuer or comforter, it might be time to step back and reassess the dynamic. And here's a great question from one of you in the comments that I think is really important to answer here. The question is, could it be possible for someone to project a victim mentality and have narcissistic traits, but be completely unaware that they're doing it because of past trauma? So yes, not everyone who has narcissistic tendencies is a full-blown narcissist. We all have defense mechanisms from past trauma that could be problematic to ourselves and our relationships. The difference if you're dealing with someone who's highly narcissistic is that they're not willing to change. They are able to a degree, but that willingness has to come first, and it usually doesn't. And you don't want to find yourself stuck in a situation where you're wasting years of your life waiting for someone to be willing to stop acting in hurtful ways. That's why it's so important to acknowledge these red flags early on. So now let's talk about that gut feeling you get when something is just off. You know that feeling when you meet someone and you can't quite put your finger on it, but something just isn't quite right. You might be tempted to write it off or feel sorry for them, but always trust your gut. At the very least, when you're getting that feeling, proceed with caution. So maybe their charm feels a little too slick, like they're laying it on thick for a reason. Or you might notice that their reactions to things are, well, just off, especially in situations that call for emotional empathy. You see, covert narcissists struggle with genuine empathy, and so they're usually faking it, and sometimes it shows. Their responses might seem over-the-top dramatic or oddly underwhelming. Or maybe it just feels forced and awkward, like they're reading from a How to Show Empathy handbook. Whatever it is that seems off, don't brush it aside. That little voice in your head saying, that was strange. It's worth listening to. Our instincts are really great at picking up on things that our conscious minds miss. So if you're getting those something's not right here vibes, take note. So it doesn't automatically mean that you're dealing with a covert narcissist, but it's definitely a sign to pay closer attention. And here's some great advice from the comment section. Intuition and trusting your gut are key. You need to listen to your inner self and not overthink. Even if that person is not cluster B, you need to walk if the chemistry is not there. Exiting a bad relationship is the hard part. Don't waste time on toxic people. All right, so now let's talk about gossip for a second. Sadly, most people do gossip sometimes. But with covert narcissists, it's a whole different ballgame. Pay close attention to how they talk about people who are not in the room. It can be pretty revealing. You might notice that they're quick to tear down others, often with a smile, and you may notice that their criticism is harsh and seems to come from a place of superiority, like they're better than the other person. And you also might see them sharing private information about someone else without a second thought. With a covert narcissist, there's a pattern of making themselves look good at another person's expense. And it might start subtle. Maybe they drop little comments like, oh, poor Sarah, she tries so hard, but Or they might share juicy secrets that aren't theirs to tell. And here's the kicker. If they're trash talking others to you, chances are they're doing the same about you when you're not around. It's not just harmless chatter. It's a way for them to feel superior and control narratives. And watch out how they frame these conversations too. They might act like they're confiding in you, creating a false sense of intimacy. But really, they're just stirring the pot. So if you're constantly hearing negativity about others from them, take it as a major red flag. It's just a matter of time before you become the topic of their next gossip session. And here's an interesting comment on gossip that I think a lot of you will relate to. My ex does this gossip style, like, I don't want to talk about this person, and then proceeded to trash talk to manipulate opinions. The fake humility and, oh, I'm just like you. Once you realize it's so disgusting and insidious. And so I don't know if any of you remember this, but this comment reminds me of that old character Benita from In Living Color. I ain't want to gossip. But yeah, this comment sums up the fake humility while tearing other people down quite well. So now let's talk about how covert narcissists act when someone dares to disagree with them. It's like watching a masterclass on deflection and defensiveness. So you might notice they shut down conversations pretty quickly if they're not going their way. Suddenly they're experts on topics they knew nothing about 5 minutes ago. And maybe they'll twist your words and use them out of context to make you look bad. Not maybe, I think they actually always do this. And of course, through it all, their tone is probably going to shift too, becoming super condescending or even hostile. It could sound something like, well, actually, followed by an insanely long lecture. Or, let's not argue about this, you're clearly upset, when you're perfectly calm. So here's the thing, healthy people can disagree, and they can handle disagreement. They might not like it, but they can engage in a respectful back and forth. Covert narcissists, not so much. For them, disagreement feels like a personal attack. Their fragile ego can't handle the idea that they might be wrong or that someone else might know more. So they lash out, shut down, or try to make you feel small for daring to have a different opinion. So watch out for this pattern. If you find yourself constantly walking on eggshells, afraid to express a different view, it might be time to reassess that relationship. It's okay to disagree sometimes. What's not okay is feeling belittled or dismissed every time you do. And now here's another thing to look out for, and this might seem subtle at first. So let's talk about how a covert narcissist will push your boundaries. In conversation, a covert narcissist might test your limits in ways you barely notice at first. It might sound something like, come on, just one more drink. Don't be boring. Or, why won't you tell me? We're friends, aren't we? They're masters at making you feel guilty for having limits. So you might find yourself sharing more than you're comfortable with or agreeing things that you'd rather not do. Pay attention to how you feel during these exchanges. If you're getting that knot in your stomach or a spike of irritation or resentment, your internal alarm system is trying to tell you something. That resentment building up inside, it's a clear sign that your boundaries are under attack. Because here's the thing, healthy relationships respect boundaries. So if you're constantly feeling pressured or guilty in conversations, it's time to take a step back and reevaluate. It's okay to say no, it's okay to keep things to yourself, and it's definitely okay to walk away from conversations that make you feel uncomfortable. And if you want to learn more about setting boundaries with a narcissist, click the video that's about to pop up on the screen to learn 10 boundaries you need to set with a narcissist. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button before you go, and I'll see you next time.